going to take a look at all of your quizzes, and we're going to go each one by each one. So on this first quiz is, okay, you got 100 on that one. I forgot to close it out. All right, on this first quiz is you got one incorrect, and so we're going to take a look at that one. This one says, what is the slope formula? The slope formula is the y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. You have to keep in mind when they do the algebra test, they're not going to give you the slope formula. So you're going to have to memorize these formulas. The first formula here that you picked is the slope-intercept form, but the slope formula has to be the change in y over the change in x. So that's all you did incorrectly on that one. All right, so let's take a look at this one. This one asks, is it a function or not? So when we're looking to see whether or not something is a function, what we do is we look at the x values, and they try to be really tricky on these questions. So you have to look at the x values. You don't care about the y values. That's why I don't care that my circle went down there. If there's any x value that is repeated, then it is not a function. So this is not a function because the number 2 in the x family is repeated. Let's take a look at your next one. All right. So with this particular one, you got a few wrong, and what I noticed about the ones that you got incorrect is most of them had like an extra coefficient. So let's take a look here. It says to factor by grouping. You're not going to necessarily be responsible for factoring by grouping. You're going to need to know how to just factor, period. But let's talk about what that means, because I'm not sure if your teacher talked to you about grouping. So you look at the first set, and your first set has a GCF. Think about the GCF or the greatest common factor. They both have an x squared that you could take out. And so what you would do is factor that out. And so factoring out that amount, or that would be like dividing it out. So if I was to take 3x to the third power divided by x squared, I would end up with 3x, because it's the same thing as saying 3x, x over x. Cancel out. So you will have a 3x left. Now, if I was to factor an x squared out of an x squared, you will only be left with a 1. Your next set to factor by grouping is this one here. So if I factored that by grouping, I would pull out a GCF, which would be a 2. And so if I pulled a 2 out of that scenario, I would divide that out and end up with 3x minus 1. And with grouping, what you want to do is you want to have the same factor somehow. So this would be, I'll use another color. This would be x squared parenthesis 3x minus 1 plus 2 parenthesis 3x minus 1. And if you see that they have that common factor, which they do, you can make that one factor, 3x minus 1. And the other factor would be the components that are left over, x squared and a 2. So x squared plus 2. All right, so that's the reason why when you see the answer, they got x squared plus 2 times 3x minus 1. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's take a look at the next one that you got incorrect. You were very close with this one when you got that one incorrect. The only thing is you got to keep in mind that the middle term was a negative a, which means it had a negative 1a. So the two factors you have, 4 plus a negative 3, would give you a positive 1. So that would not work. But a negative 4 plus a 3 will give you that negative 1. Remember, when you are factoring in this way, you need factors of AC, which is 1 times negative 12. So factors of negative 12 that will add to give you the coefficient or B, which is negative 1. So you need factors of negative 12 that would add to give you negative 1. And those factors would be negative 4 and 3. All right. And another thing you can do, you can always check it in Desmos to see if your factors are going to give you the same thing. So what do I mean by that? If I pull up Desmos and they tell me that they want me to factor something, you should probably use x as a x and y as opposed to a value. So I'm changing it to x squared minus x minus 12. So here is my original problem. But then if I pick my factors will still give me the same exact graph. You see that? This graph went right over the red graph. But for yours, you had x plus 4, x plus 4, and x minus 3. And look, you see how the red and the blue don't coincide? That lets you know that that's not the same answer. That's one way of checking it. All right, so let's take a look at your last one that you got incorrect. The last one says all right, keep in mind that your first step is to always take a look at the GCF. And so you did pull out the GCF, which is 2x. And then what you do have left is 4x squared minus 9. But you always want to look and see if you have anything left to do. So in this case, we have the difference of two squares. I say squared because 4x squared is a squared and is a perfect square, sorry. And we know that 9 is also a perfect square. So, and it's a difference because it's a subtraction. So you want to leave your GCF out and then you set up your other two parentheses. And then you take the square root of 4x squared, which is 2x. Put that in both. And then the square root of 9, which is 3. And then you add a plus and a minus. And that's your difference of two squares. Other than that and those few problems, you did phenomenal. You're definitely going to pass this test.